call this meeting to order at 5:31. Regular select board meeting. I had my agenda. There it is. Any adjustments to the agenda, Karen?
No.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Oh, we still have those August 26th ones. I need to figure those out.
We're looking into that, Josh.
Yeah, my agenda only printed partial, so I don't have the dates. It's October. What's our approval? October 7th.
Yes.
Okay. So moved, David?
So moved.
So it's been moved, and I'll second to approve the minutes of October 7th as presented. If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then we have warrants. So
Make a motion to approve the warrants upon completion and review
and execute.
and execute.
So it's been, I'll second that. It's been moved to approve and execute the warrants upon completion of review. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. So Karen,
Payroll warrant dated October 23rd in the amount of $17,968.03.
David, you got any questions on that one?
No.
Okay. I don't believe I do either. So, and what about the AP?
Accounts payable warrant dated October 10th through October 23rd, 2020 in the amount of $246,313.37. In this warrant, you will see a U.S. bank payment of $188,000. $888,858.54. That's for the fire, sewer, and water bond payments.
Wow.
Cool, Kyle.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right. What
Sorry,
was that all about?
that was me.
Don't do that again.
Sorry. I wanted to say also that bond was the gravel pit too.
And the gravel pit. Josh, are you still with us?
Yeah, I can't look at stuff and have you on screen at the same time. So it goes back and forth. So, and that for our bond payment, that's just a once a year annual payment. Is that correct, Karen?
There's interest in there as well. So the gravel pit, we had $12,935 of interest with a principal payment of $40,000 even. And then of course the fire, water, and sewer are all one bond payment. So there was $38,818.36 worth of interest and the principal payment of $97,105.18.
But this is a bond payment we only make once a year.
But we're going to have another interest payment later in the spring.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. I don't have any further questions on that. You, David?
Nope.
Good. We have somebody who is identified as somebody who's called in, who's identified as caller 1. If you want to be on a public meeting, you need to be identified. So this is whoever caller 1 is, if you could identify yourself, please. Anybody who's calling in?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. This is Amy Sugihara. I'm calling in to listen to the meeting, just a citizen in Putney.
Sounds good. Thanks. Thanks for identifying yourself as well. Welcome to the meeting.
Yeah. Thank you. And when I called in, it said I couldn't speak. I had to have a code to speak. So can you hear me or?
We can hear you. You must have known the code somehow.
Not to speak, I didn't. No, but just to get into the call, it was on your website.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
No, it could
then,
connect you. So if you want to comment on anything, since you can't, typically we ask people to put something in the chat box if they want to comment. But if you are wanting to comment on something, I try to pause and ask people if they have anything to say. But if you want to make any comments, then please make sure your voice is heard.
Thank you. And so I will mute myself.
Sounds good.
Because I'm in the kitchen cooking, and I thought you couldn't hear me.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, public comment on items not on the agenda. Do we have? Do we have anybody? Looks like most people who are on are here for a reason, but if anybody is here for public comment, now would be the time. You can either put something in the chat, and I don't see anything in the chat at the moment, or speak up, but sounds like we don't have any public comment. So broadband, Deerfield Valley Communications, request for Comcast internet service.
So I put this back on the agenda for radar, and Mike Maricki is here tonight, and he would like to speak regarding Communication Union District and the Comcast internet services. I did get a request, well, a call from a neighbor on Watts Pond Road, and there's a handful of neighbors up there that are looking to have Comcast provide service, possibly. So Mike, this is a big discussion. I'm not sure if you were able to watch the select board meeting when we had Consolidated Communications with us a couple weeks back. It seems like people are positioning, for broadband, and we understand why. But right now, I think it's fair to say that myself, there's a lot to consider and which way to go. And I think it's fair to have the select board research all options at this point. We're not against any one of them, but we want to make the right choice.
Yeah, Mike, what I would be interested in, particularly, I don't know what you're planning on saying, but just the difference between, I guess having heard presentations, or we've been in discussion with the Communications Union District for, we've had them now at least twice, maybe 3 times come and speak to various different things. And then we had Consolidated come. Consolidated was clearly a sales pitch. It's a different, it's a different thing, but they certainly sound like they are ready to or able to move things along more quickly than a CUD would be able to. And I don't know, I guess what I would be interested in hearing from you is how other towns are approaching this. I don't feel like I certainly am equipped to know how to evaluate this situation correctly, and whether we need to form, I know we've had discussion about a broadband group on and off, but I don't think we ever formally formed one, and whether we need to do that, because I think we really need to do sort of apples to apples comparisons of how these things are going to work. So that's what I'd love to hear your perspective on that as you say what you're going to.
I would like to make a comment first too before you respond to that, if I could, Mike. I have a lot of questions about this too, apples to apples. If we join a CUD, will it then be our business and we have to do the billing? Does the CUD does that? Is the quality of service the same between what Consolidated offers or Comcast would offer, or what the CUD has to offer? I have tons of questions, so I'd like to hear about those things too.
All set? Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk and to hear what you've been doing already. My understanding was Steve Johns had come and talked with you, and it sounds like there's still questions, and I'm glad to help with that. My main concern is we have a lot of people in Putney and surrounding towns who don't have access to broadband, and the people up on Watts Pond Road have contacted me. There are people all around town that have contacted me, and I can share you an experience that I'm dealing with right now with a constituent who's been sent home to work. The kids have been home a couple days a week now, and they don't have access to broadband. They have the copper wires, and they can't handle more than one user at a time. What we did was we contacted Comcast, who gave them an estimate of $12,000 to get signed up. We pushed to get one of those $3,000 grants from the state, and it was approved. So we went back to Comcast and said, I think we can, it's a lot of money, but I think we can, we want to go ahead and do with it. The response from Comcast was to give them a second estimate for $30,000. Now I know in business, sometimes people do that when they don't want to turn down work, but they don't have the time to do it, or for whatever reason, they don't want to do it. But we're looking into this now with the state, and if we need to go to the Public Utilities Commission, because that's my understanding was Comcast was given the license to operate in Vermont to actually sign more people up and to expand. And here were people ready to pay a significant amount, which then more than doubled. That's not going to get it done. And I think when whether it's Comcast, whether it's Consolidated, or whether it's a CUD, I'm open to whatever works. I'm a pragmatist. I want to see people in Putney get served. I mean, this is the reality for the 21st century, whether it's work, whether you have kids in school, and I think it's important to do. So I'm open to listening to all and seeing what I can do to get the best deal and the most expeditious deal, because for many of us, we've been waiting a long time. And so if Consolidated has a deal that's ready to go, I would say go with it. But in the meantime, I would think it makes sense to at least hear what the CUD is putting together. And that's where if we need people to sit on that, I'm willing to sit on that committee, and I think Court Trowbridge is as well. And if we want to do something right here in town, because I don't want to put more work on Karen's desk. She's got enough to do, and we want this to happen, but I don't want to increase her workload, or Josh, you or David. So I'm willing to help put something together, and if the select board wants to seat a committee and put that together to try and get those comparisons, then I'm willing to help with that too. I think this is a very important thing for the growth of Putney and the growth of Vermont, really. This is a barrier to people coming here. It's a barrier to younger people who want to come to Vermont and are used to having viable and reliable broadband. So that I'll stop now, and if you have any other questions.
So I have some comments, Mike. Sorry, Josh. So
Go ahead.
I've read through the feasibility study for the CUD, and I did inquire with Stephen Johns again, if we join the CUD today, now that we have two people from Putney that would represent on that board, if we chose later down the road to opt out, can we do that? David and Josh, I sent you the response from my question to Stephen Johns. And we are able, the select board can choose to opt out. So because the select board voted, if they vote to join, the select board can vote to opt out. Now, with the CUD, it looks like they won't have a build out until 2022 at least, Mike, at least. And they don't have all the towns that were in the feasibility study. So they have 15 towns right now and they're shy by 10. So what does that mean? You know, how much needs to be financed? How much needs to be raised? How much is it going to cost the consumer? You know, there's some pros and cons with the CUD. We reached out to Consolidated only because they have fiber in town already. And they're building infrastructure in New Hampshire. They've got 7 towns over there that have already, you know, bought in and they're building for them. And it takes a year. But it's critical that we make a decision and know which way to go, because if we looked at Consolidated, we're going to have to bond. And that is something we need to be ready for, you know, in March at town meeting.
And one of the differences, and I'm sorry, were you done, Karen?
No, go ahead. You're fine.
There's a great hope, most especially if there's a changed administration in Washington, that there will actually be significant federal money available to states through the CUDs. And these will be grants, not necessarily bonding. It may be matching, so there may be some piece, but my understanding is, as with Chesterfield, the town took on the bonding for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that Consolidated actually put some money on the table themselves. But you know, the town decided as a whole that they needed to do this, as did Norwich, Vermont, when they started EC Fiber. Now, EC Fiber is the first CUD in Vermont. They now serve 20 towns up there, and they have service to the last address. So it can work. They have a viable business plan. They created the company. It's not the towns that take this on, whether it's for billing or follow-up. So they've created the company that does that. And so that may be one of the advantages of looking at the CUD. I don't think one precludes the other, though. So as I said, I'm willing to go with what works.
One other question, Mike. Do you know if there's going to be more grant funding for residents to be able to have fiber to their home?
Not until the next legislature. That there was these $3,000 grants that were offered. My understanding is that's been exhausted, and unless more stimulus money comes between now and then, it'll have to wait until the next legislature in January.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman, go ahead.
3 clarifications that I'm going to offer regarding what we talked about just now, and also when Consolidated Communications was there. I don't know what that is.
That's Eva's telephone. Maybe you can mute her, Karen, or
I've already done. Go ahead, Howard.
Sure. First, mention has been made of asking the Vermont Public Utilities Commission to help with the Comcast issue here in Putney. Bear in mind that internet service is no longer a regulated service, so the Vermont PUC has no jurisdiction. Concerning Communications Union District versus Consolidated Communications, I want to emphasize that 2 weeks ago during their presentation, they said after 20 years, the town of Putney will own the telecommunications network. Now, a key question is, does the town of Putney want to own a telecommunications network? With a communications union district, the communications union district, which is equivalent to a fire district or a water district, owns it, not individual towns. And this could be an important consideration in terms of things like what if there's a natural disaster and a lot of the what telco people like me call a physical plant has to be rebuilt. If the liability can be spread over a communications union district, this can be a big help. Now, also last week, there was an assertion made that the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank will bond for telecommunications networks. I confirmed with Executive Director Michael Gogan this afternoon, about 3 hours ago, that no, they will not, because their enabling legislation currently does not allow them to bond for anything other than water and sewer and another one that I've forgotten, but it's not telecommunications. So I'm just offering those clarifications to put into the mix here.
So do you know in that conversation, Howard, whether because my understanding is we would be bonding for if we were part of the CUD, but I'm not clear on whether we actually bond for that or the CUD bonds. And would that same situation apply for the CUD as it would for us? Do you have any idea?
Yes, I do, because at present, the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank simply does not bond for telecommunications networks. Doesn't matter whose it is.
Regardless of who it is, okay.
Yes.
And I think that Stephen Johns may have mentioned that as well, and I don't remember what the sort of how we were supposed to look at that. But
now, in that regard, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that perhaps this is something that Representative Mrowicki could look into for us. Why doesn't the enabling legislation allow bonding for telecommunications networks? And is this perhaps something that the next legislature could look into and perhaps rectify?
yeah.
Howard, that's a great idea, and I also appreciate you're looking into the idea of the greater liability with the CUD or the difference in liability and responsibilities between a CUD and an individual town taking something like that. I think that can be a significant challenge for a town to take something like this on by themselves.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, certainly. I think the question is, I mean, again, Consolidated is a business, no question about that. I think they were pitching it as us owning it at the end of 20 years would be an advantage. And I guess that would be the question, is what that advantage is. I think that they said, and I'm just, my recollection is a little vague, but essentially I think the point was that then at that point, the town could turn to other contractors and potentially either lease or, have a contractor run it for them, depending on who the contractor was available at that time. But I think these are the kinds of questions that we really need to, I think to Karen's point, Consolidated saying that they could do this inside of a year, and that the CUD, my impression from listening to the discussion on the CUD is that build out wouldn't start for quite a while. And part of that is because that it has to go for federal funding, has to get approved for federal funding, and then has to go out to bid as a result of that federal funding. And I think that's part of the time issue. And but then I was under the impression, and I might be wrong, that then the CUD sort of makes the decision as to how to prioritize the build out. And that I felt like it sounded that meant some areas of some towns might not get built for quite some time. And so I think that was something that was very appealing about the idea of Consolidated. And it might be worth, Mike, having more conversation with Chesterfield, just because it's a pretty similar demographic, I think. And obviously the terrain is relatively similar. But I would assume that if we were interested in something like that, I would assume Comcast would be interested in having putting in a, whether that's a MOU or a, I'm not sure what it would be. I guess it would be an RFP for looking at how to do something like this. But I don't know how to evaluate those differences. And I don't know that you do either, or who we go to evaluate those differences and really look at all the ins and outs.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Yeah, hang on one sec, Mr. Fairman. David,
Sure.
you want to say something?
Question I have, or idea I have, is is Consolidated going to move forward with stringing cable even if we don't bond with them and we join the CUD? Does it matter to us who serves the people? If we join the CUD and Comcast, because they're a business, is going to continue to spread fiber in the town, seems like we're hedging our bets. We get a little bit of the best of both worlds. Maybe we could talk to Dublin too. It seems like Dublin did something with Consolidated after Chesterfield did. And I remember Stephen John saying they, for lack of a better memory of it, worked a better deal than Chesterfield did and would own the network sooner. And so maybe that's a place people to talk to as well, Michael. So instead of putting all of our eggs in one basket, maybe there's a way to, my concern, a way to do more than one thing at the same time. And the projection that I saw watching the meeting on GoToMeeting, the CUD, was that it wasn't for 5 years. They were that Putney wouldn't be served for up to 5 years. And that's a long time. Put all your eggs in that basket. So anyway, that's it.
Yep. These are good questions, David, and I agree that they're not good answers yet. And one of the reasons we're looking at these CUDs is because what we found out is the free market solution hasn't worked. We depended on Comcast, before that Southern Vermont Cable, and just getting Southern Vermont to do that expansion up on West Hill took about 3 years. And it turned out it was mostly state money. I mean, people had to pony up themselves, but and it helped to have Peter as governor at the time too, because he pushed pretty hard on that. So again, I'm open to what works best, and I'm open to being part of a discussion moving forward to how we can get that information and put those options in front of you and the voters. Because let's say you want to go with Consolidated, you'd have to put a bond before the voters, I anticipate, and in these times or any times, getting a bond passed is not always an easy thing. And looking ahead right now, there's a lot of concern that because Congress hasn't acted to put some more stimulus, that we may be looking at a double dip reception here. Right. And that may change the landscape even more.
And also, to Mr. Fairman's point, if we can't bond for it anyway, then it's sort of a moot point. I mean, I don't know where else we would go to for financing for that. And I'm not sure. I would assume that as this is sort of coming more to a head, that the legislature is probably looking at that bonding issue anyway, I would think. But
yeah. I'll check in with Laura Sibilia over on the other side of the mountain there. She's been really pushing this hard and through her work with Brattleboro Credit Development, understanding what a barrier it's been not having the kind of access that Vermonters want. So I'll see if she has some answers, or we'll see what I can do to find those answers through the state. But that bonding is a big piece, no matter who we go to. As I said too, and we've heard from Peter Welch and Senator Leahy's office that they're pushing, especially for rural areas, to try and get a significant amount of money nationwide. This is a problem. It's not just Vermont, it's not just New England. Wherever it's an urban-rural demarcation here for people who have broadband and don't. And there's a big push, similar to the rural electrification that happened almost 100 years ago now. And I'm hoping we can do better, because I'm told it took 10 to 15 years for that to get electricity to every address. And let's hope we can do better.
Well, we're working on that right now, Mike, as far as, we're pushing 10 to 15 years as far as getting internet through Putney already. It's amazing how long. And going back to, for years, we've been hearing governors and others say, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And it's a huge hurdle to overcome.
It's a heavy lift, and every time we think we're going to get closer, then something else comes and the money gets diverted.
Yeah, definitely.
Right now, there's a sense it's a $300 million problem in Vermont, and that it's going to be hard to pull that just out of the state budget. That's why we're hopeful that in the next stimulus that they recognize broadband is an essential part of the economy nationwide.
Mr. Fairman, did you have something to add?
Yes, following on from what Representative Murwicki has just said, several people have mentioned Comcast in this regard. Comcast should certainly be encouraged to compete for this, because we bear in mind that Consolidated Communications are trying to save their business. They are the successor to Verizon, but only for Verizon's landlines. Verizon kept its wireless business. Consolidated Communications has no wireless business at a time when landlines are disappearing from use because people make phone calls on their cell phones. And the reason to have wire lines to your home or fiber to your home is internet access, in which both Comcast Xfinity and Consolidated Communications are competitive. So certainly we should ask them to go at it versus each other in terms of providing service. You mentioned rural electrification. We shouldn't wait as long as we did for that. That did not complete until the 1950s. How do I know? Because electricity came to my grandmother's home in Vernon in 1956. Bear in mind that the Vernon hydro plant started generating electricity in 1909. And she did not live at the end of the road. So, these things can go on for a long time. It really is up to us to act. And by the way, I do know how to put something like this together, and I will help with it.
Sounds good. Thank you. The other, Jamie Contois sent a chat that Lawrence O'Neill had worked on stuff in their neighborhood, and Lawrence might be a good person to tap also, Mike, because he might be willing and able.
That was another project that probably took five years to get online.
Yeah.
That I was helping with, and it actually started with trying to not have a cell tower put in the neighborhood there. I don't know if people remember that. And then the next piece was to try and actually get some lines pulled.
Yeah. No, and I think the interesting thing is that, unlike this discussion in the past, we do appear to have, between Consolidated and a CUD and probably Comcast, interested quote unquote bidders. I mean, in the past, just trying to convince somebody to do this was like pulling teeth. And it seems like people are willing to do it. But I think you're right that it's incumbent upon us to make it happen. So, Mike, you should think about who and how, whether you want us to form a committee, if you want to be part of that, or how, if you want to give us a little bit of guidance based on experience in other towns, et cetera. And, if we need to pull some people together, I think we can work on that. But yeah, no, I think the sooner we move on it, the better.
Yep, I agree. And Karen,
Yes.
Like I said, I want to do this in a way that doesn't put more work on your desk. So would it work, David and Josh, if Karen and I had a conversation to try and start forming this and to make sure it does so in a way that doesn't impact her work as much, but which allows her the input to help guide the conversations as well.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a viable plan?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And I'm happy to be involved to whatever degree you want or need me to as well.
Sure.
However I might be helpful, but
And then we'll check with Eva.
Yeah.
there we go.
I'd like to make one more comment. So I had Alyssa create a place on the website under the Selectboard tab for broadband. In there, you're going to find the feasibility study and the business plan that Wyndham Regional Commission pulled together. So anyone that's interested in broadband, we're going to consolidate all the information to that one area and try to move through it.
Sure. That's helpful to know. I'm just catching my breath from finishing up with the legislative session and getting my feet under me again. And then we'll be starting up before too long. So I'll take a look at that, and then Karen, we can have a conversation.
Sure.
If that works for the select board.
We did the consolidated presentation, Mike, was interesting. We probably have the slides from that. Karen, you may have referred to that, but you know, they definitely, it was, again, much more of a sales pitch, and it just was a very different approach than the CUD in how they were looking at it. And I just don't know the best, but anyway. Sounds like we have. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Fairman.
I'll add a further clarification. I perhaps should mention that I'm former Bell Canada, which is Canada's largest telephone company, network statistics and engineering economics. The key thing to understand here is when somebody is building telecommunications, what we call telecommunications physical plant, that is running wires or fiber or whatever, what they're looking at, they're putting a lot of money into this, and the reason is to make money.
Yes.
Well, if there's not enough customers out there to give them a return on investment, they're not interested. Now, what Consolidated Communications is proposing is we'll build it, but you pay for it.
Right.
And that is the way all of these proposals are likely to work out in terms of getting anything to the last mile. Is someone is going to have to finance it, which will either be a town individually, such as ours, or a communications union district. And there's where we come back to the question of, can we perhaps arrange so the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank can do bonding for these? And once again, I pass that back to Representative Marucki.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Eva has something to add. I think you're on mute, Eva.
No,
I'm off now. But what I don't understand is, like my neighbors up the road here, the Gilberts, they're organizing 6 households. They've met with Comcast, and they seem to be moving forward as a cluster. And it's my understanding that the people in Mary Lou Treat's old house, that they are somehow connected to Comcast. Now, this is not up Watt Pond. This is, what I don't understand is, so if groups of people get what they want, what happens when the town moves on something bigger for the town? I mean, I don't understand the. Yeah.
Right.
I think my sense of that would be that it's sort of a numbers game in that respect. I mean, if you're a group of 6 households that's relatively close to a hub or the main trunk, then doing that as a group of 6 is fine. But if you're 6 people out at the end of, you know, wherever it might be, Town Farm Road or somewhere further away, then the economic hurdle is much greater. And that's why, I mean, the project Mike was referring to with Southern Vermont Cable, my recollection is, Mike, that they, in order to make that economically viable, I think they needed 60 some odd subscribers. So it was it had to be a big group, but it's all about having enough people. And Mr. Fairman's right, you know, they're making money by putting this infrastructure in, and then to have us pay for it is great for them, and then they make money over time off it. But you have to have a lot of people signed up in order to make that work. So I think it's all about proximity and numbers.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I can explain what probably is the situation with Eva's neighbors. It probably is what's called a mesh network. And that is the house at the end of the official telecommunications line sets up equipment that connects to the next house, which then connects to the next house and the next house. This is probably what's going on. And these are, and you can go to a store and you can buy the equipment to do this. You know, Walmart has it on the shelf, for example. I've seen it there. So I guess I mentioned that for two reasons. One, to clarify what Eva mentioned, and second, that actually is a potential alternative for some people who are out in places like perhaps Watt Pond Road. It is possible to create a local network all by yourselves.
Yeah, and my recollection is that, well, I guess this also raises for me the question of where wireless does come into this, because I think that concept was very much, remember Great Auk, you know, Great Auk was based on people essentially committing to being hubs and then distributing from their location, is my recollection. So it was sort of the same concept, but we also might want to explore, you know, I mean, if I can't remember what it's called, but, you know, if Elon Musk's fleet of satellites is likely to come online, then the wireless issue may be more surmountable, and it would be too bad to bond for 20 years to build out infrastructure that was irrelevant in 5. And I have no idea whether that's a possibility or a likelihood or anything else, but it's certainly something we should be exploring.
Yeah, I think Starlink is a for-profit venture, though. So my guess is there's going to be a line for the return on investment that he wants. And my other guess is it's going to be a while before the rural build out really gets hit by that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll mention a little something. I'm going to ask you if you to recall something first and then explain what it really is. You know, sometimes you're watching an interview on TV and the interviewer asks a question and the other person waits several seconds before they respond. That tells you they're connected. That tells you they're connected via satellite.
Right.
And in engineering, we call this latency. It's the time the signal takes to travel from the up to the satellite and back down again, which is a distance of something like 45,000 miles, twice around the Earth, equivalent to twice around the Earth. Now that really screws up internet connections, and there's no way around it because it is set by the speed of light, which is a law of physics. So satellite internet is never going to be as satisfactory as internet that is ground-based, whether it's wireless on the ground, as with 5G cell phones, or whether it is with a fiber or copper.
Yeah. No, I think and assume you're definitely right in that respect. I guess the question is, you know, I mean, this discussion of there being wireless ability, again, in the discussion of completing to the last mile, there's been discussion whether it's on the ground infrastructure that promotes that or whether it's via satellite, I don't know. But again, you know, if we were wiser to invest in another cell phone tower or two that would serve the same purpose as building out, you know, 32 miles of fiber, that might be a better investment. But I have no idea, and I don't know whether that's realistic. I think we've discovered, because of the topography of Vermont, that it's very challenging to get all the little bits and pieces via wireless. So,
Mr. Chairman, because of what you just mentioned here, I realize there's another company that should be brought into this, which is VTEL up in Springfield. They have a lot of experience with setting up cellular wireless.
You know, I have reached out to VTEL just as a casual query, and right now they are not looking to expand. And whenever they have expanded, it's because they have gotten large infusions of government money. They are not putting their own money on the table either.
They never have.
smart. All right. Well, I said a few minutes ago, and now we've circled back. It sounds like we have at least some marching orders. So, yeah, Mike, why don't you start with a conversation with Karen, and however we can be helpful. And Mr. Fairman, I'm sure you will have a conversation with Karen, and that sounds great. Let's try and keep it moving. So thank you all very much. Okay, Equity and Inclusion Committee update. You had it out, Mike? Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Jamie, are you on for that?
I guess I am. Tell me if you have some questions, because I didn't have a presentation prepared.
Well, I think one of the questions around town, as you and I talked a little bit about earlier, was people's queries about maintenance of the Black Lives Matter mural. And then I know also, I see Swift is here now on camera, but I know you were having some trouble with getting a quorum, and whether you're feeling, I guess, just basically how do you feel like things are going on equity and inclusion, and then the question of the mural also.
Okay, great. So the first order of business is we would like to recommend that Swift join the Equity and Inclusion Committee. I've been paying attention to her voice in social media prior to meeting her at the mural painting, and just was really impressed with the thoughtfulness and the level of just care she brought to all of the communications that she's had in our community, and really appreciate her showing up in the ways that she has, both physically and online. And so, so thanks, Swift, for your interest in joining the Equity and Inclusion Committee. So we needed you to, I think you have to vote on that, right?
Yeah, we'll do that. Why don't you go ahead with your report, and then we'll.
So I think the simple, fast version, if it's possible, is just that we had the successful mural painting at the end of September, right? Are we almost a month out? There was 70 to 80 people there. It was a beautiful day, very peaceful. We paid about $1,000 with the Windham County Sheriff's Office. They had 4 deputies there, with a 5th one, I think, driving around. That was just really exciting to have a day of just joy, and people did a beautiful job. We really appreciated. Josh, I think you were part of a team of folks. When we looked at the map, we kind of said, wow, we're really going to have to measure this situation out. So we had a plan that turned into needing some figuring out, and it turned out beautifully. And it was just lots of different skill sets. I think everything from Ward to Lisa Munoz and all the young people from the Putney school who came down, and young kids from the Landmark College. It was just amazing from watching the community come together. And the other piece that was beautiful was I stayed behind after cleaning everything up, and people stopped. It was like people knew we were going to be done or something at noon. And so people stopped and got out of their cars with their children and took photos. And I could see these conversations happening. And one woman came up to me. I was kind of sitting in my car being a creeper. And this one woman came up to me. She goes, "Did you have anything to do with this?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, I'm going to start crying. She goes, "I'm going to tell my son. He's a young man of color." And she was a white woman. And she goes, "He's a young man of color, and he just won't believe this is here." And it was just like this kind of experience of, I sat and watched like 4 or 5 people that happened. So it was just really beautiful. And I was just starting to recognize something I hadn't thought of, which is the ripple effect and what impact it was going to have on people that I wasn't even imagining. So anyway, that was really exciting. I think one part that's been sad is, the escalation of, people putting tire marks on the graffiti. I think it wasn't unexpected, but it's hard to see when, a simple message is really turned into something that's threatening, and then that somebody needs to disrespect. So I think that's been hard. The Equity and Inclusion Committee, after seeing a lot of chatter online of people wanting to repair the mural after there was a series of lines put over some of the words, people on social media and through email and lots of other ways were reaching out to the Equity Committee and saying, "I want to help repair the mural. I want to help repair the mural." So we had a meeting and had a discussion about what does that mean? And how, many of us have a lot going on in our lives with small children and just what this time is like for so many people. And so we talked about doing mural repair after the election, to not distract people from this important moment, but to say, hey, after the election and Sunday, after the election, that we'll get together again and repair it. I at first thought it was going to be a simple job of, I've got a bucket of paint, we'll go out and paint it. But then I was like, wait, you've got to do the safety component again. You've got to do the closing the road piece again so that you can get it to dry. So even though a lot of the difficult pieces like layout are done, you would still need to do lane closure in a safe way. So I don't know that that's on the same timeline that a lot of folks have. One of the pieces in the press release that Equity and Inclusion put out after that meeting that was really important was that I think went into the Brattleboro Reformer on Friday, is that we really need support as Equity and Inclusion to do this work. And so if there's somebody in the community who wanted an accelerated timeline, or a group of folks who was like, yes, we really want to do this now, that there would be, we're not going to stop anything. We want to support any of that to happen as people want it to happen, but that we will not have the bandwidth to do that organizing. So as many people as can help and volunteer now to help with that work would be great. So I don't know if that answered all of the questions.
Yeah, I think mostly. I think I don't imagine we would need. I'm sure we would not. We need the Windham County Sheriffs involved again, because it would be a much shorter time frame. I think that we could have a couple responsible people on signs that we could borrow from the highway department and take care of traffic control if it was in a time period that was as low traffic as possible. So.
I feel mixed about that. In one way, I'm like, of course it would be that simple, because the $1,000 price tag, I'm like in my head going, oh my goodness. The concern I have about that, and I am not clear, and I would love group think on this. One of the parts that's been hard for me, and as it is probably for many people in our community, is watching very difficult conversations on social media. And I don't frankly have that much time to get on social media, but I get forwarded stuff. And the level of vitriol at different times within the community has actually made me be a little bit shocked. And so I'm not clear where that is now. And so one of the reasons that I think it's really important to think about this from a safety perspective is that, with things like Confederate flags and truck, there was a group of trucks that went through that had Confederate flags. And so at different times it's felt like you could be in harm's way if somebody didn't quite care if they harmed you or not. And so I can't tell if that's within our community or if that's without our community and just traveling through. But my perception is, as a body of people who really want to build peace and trust and transparency, that we need to openly discuss that and really honor the fact that that it's our job as the equity committee to make sure that space is safe. And what I wish could easily happen is that we could close the road and I could wave cars through. That being said, we're probably going to be much more public this time about location and time, because one of the critiques that I heard from a number of folks was that they felt like this was all being done in secret, and it wasn't intentionally done that way. It was, I was seeing some real escalations, and so we were trying to do things in a safe way and communicate to people in a particular way, but we'll be much more open about it. And so as the nation is broiled in this political moment, there are people, I'll speak as a queer woman, and I've talked to a number of Black and brown folks who feel like they are in danger, and that there is a level of animosity that is building that is going to actually come to people in a very dangerous way in the next couple weeks. So as much as I wish things were just what you said, Josh, I really want to honor the fact that it's going to be important for us to keep doing our work in the next couple of weeks. For my goal will be to speak with people who, and talk to people directly and say, hey, this is who I am. I'm a human being too. You're a human being. Let's figure this out together. But I think we are going to have to be really thoughtful about safety.
Yeah. Eva, you have something to say?
Well, did any of you read the letter to the editor by, what's his name, the builder that lives right beside there? What's the chap's name? He does construction, house building. He lives right next to the sign.
Jerry Hyam, maybe?
Yeah, a wonderful letter. I mean, he really kind of took on the whole ridiculousness of trying to tear up the sign and doing all that. I thought it was great. He spoke up. And Jamie, as an old lesbian who's lived here for years and has been out, I would say to you, I put my arm around you and tell you, yes, we do want to be aware of craziness and the whole social media thing. I think we stay away from that. It's just crazy, the social media stuff. Stay away from it. Yeah, if real face-to-face or letters to the editor. I read the inclusion statement in both, the paper. You're doing good work, but please do not let fear of craziness take over, okay? I'm with you. Josh is with you. David's with you. Karen's with you. We're here, so I want you to know.
I do want to add to that, in the interest of being a truly equitable and inclusive committee and group, I have heard from those, particularly some with Trump signs in their yards, of very vitriolic and threatening language used towards them. And I do think it's really important that all of us recognize all of our role in having our community being welcoming to everyone. And I heard a story the other day that somebody with a Trump sign in front of their house had somebody walking by and yelled at them that they should move out of town. And I found that really disappointing. Nobody should be telling anybody they should move out of town. And I know, I agree with you, Jamie, the vitriol, feels particularly targeted at certain people, but I think it's coming and going in all directions right now. And it's really unfortunate. And I think we all, ideally would just take deep breaths and, hopefully things are going to improve, but they may not for a while. But I think that we all have to take it on ourselves to be good neighbors to all of our neighbors. And that's hard to remember in this moment. Yeah. But I think it's
and Josh, we're multifaceted. And at times people, and we evolve or we regress. And it's just there in the nature of being human. And I had a wonderful talk. I won't mention her name. Somebody right here in town, very outstanding and outspoken, who'd always been a conservative voter. And she announced that she had seen the light, so to speak. People change, we change, and we're open. And, it's never, Jamie, it's never going to be perfect, but you're a wonderful mother. You have 2 beautiful children. You have a wonderful family, and you come to this, however you come to this, but be not afraid. There are crazy people out here. And my friend said, Eva, I looked at the license plate. Most of them were from New Hampshire. Now, no, nothing against New Hampshire. There's crazy Vermonters too, Josh. We know that. But being rude and mean to people, it's doesn't get it. And to get to know people without being too nice, I guess that's it. I'm not wanting to win friends and influence people, but I want to be a straightforward, honest, caring person. And I think that's our job, is to let people know that they're safe when they're with us.
Can I say something? What did you say?
I was just wanted to respond.
Yeah.
I was just going to respond to you, Eva, about social media. I think I love the sentiment of just forget it. Like, it's awful. Leave it in the dust. And It's a huge platform that so many people use, and I don't think it's possible to ignore it because it's this place where so much information does come in. And there are people that use that as their primary news source. There are people that use that as their primary communication source. And so I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but this piece of that, when there's big conversations going on that platform, it's information that needs to come to leadership to realize, because it gives information to like, oh, these are conversations people in our town are having that might affect an event or just the sensation, the feeling in town right now is pretty.
I'm saying not to participate. That is where we put our foot in our mouth, shoot ourselves in the foot while it's in our mouth. Many times over that, I see it happen. You know, and somebody said, oh my God.
I see that. And then also it gets noticed when there's silence. They're like, wait, why isn't the town, like the fact that the town doesn't have any access on social media for these meetings is like, as a person that's in their early 30s, it's like, that would be such an easy way to get more people to come to select board meetings if there was a Facebook post that like, I don't know what the legal side of that is at all, but I'm saying this piece of it's a platform, and it definitely can be an absolute curse, 100%. And it is someplace where a lot of people get their information. And right now, the sentiment of what you were saying, Jamie, on social media is very dissonant, and it gives us more information as people it gives you information, people that are in leadership.
I think, I guess my opinion on it would be, I'm not engaged in social media because it's not a useful platform for me, just because it's not my makeup. But you know, what I would encourage people, as I'm saying, with people walking by houses and yelling at their neighbors, you know, even if you're engaging on social media, be courteous, be friendly. I think Eva's sort of saying the same thing, is don't engage in the vitriol on social media, because nobody comes out ahead because of that. I mean, I agree with you completely, Swift, that it's an incredibly important platform for people to communicate and get information, but it's also a platform where people feel they can stoop to their absolute lowest and be comfortable, and that's what I personally would like to discourage. You know, let's all try and rise above that a little bit, whether it's on social media or walking around the village. You know, it's unnecessary and uncalled for, and doesn't promote good relationships. So why bother?
Absolutely. And people say things on social media they would never say in person, ever.
Yeah.
So this piece of, there's no face to face. It's, yes, I can see your picture, I can see your family, I see that you live near me, but I think you're a DB and blah, 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 and blah, blah.
Yeah.
I would never walk on the street and say that. So
Right.
It's definitely complicated, but
yeah,
I don't think we can ignore it.
Mr. Chairman?
I wanted to just respond real quick, and I'm guessing there's so many thousands of things you guys have to talk about tonight, so I'll just say quickly. One of the things I've appreciated about the Putney Anti-Racism Book Group and Reading White Fragility, and so you want to talk about race, is that deep discussion about systemic power. And so I think one of the things that's really important to me as a social justice activist is that I not dehumanize the other, and that thing that you talked about. I come from a long line of conservatives who are very excited about things that are very hard for me. And so just figuring out how to keep humanizing each other and engaging with each other, and, you know, having conversations with folks that think differently than you is important. So one thing that's really important that I want to say publicly and hope it's spread is that it is never okay for us to threaten each other or harm each other or dehumanize each other with our different political beliefs. It is always important that we look for bridges with each other. The place that I think it's super critical to notice a power dynamic is when young children of color watch a Confederate flag drive through the community and they think they're being put on notice, and that they won't be safe in the next couple of weeks in our community. I just want to make sure we're not a part of the same, you know, thing. Like there's good people, and I just want to be super clear about systemic power and what it feels like as people who, you know, could have our rights taken away in the next couple of weeks and months and years, and how critical what that feels like as you're being dehumanized through public policy. and also feeling like you're being put on notice as a symbol of you being dehumanized as driving past your home. So I just want to make sure we keep elevating those conversations in our community and saying, let's be really clear with each other and really direct with each other and share our beliefs and talk about this as an issue of morality, but also let's be really clear about how our specific power changes our relationship to those kinds of experiences.
Yeah. No, and I also think, Jamie, it's important it's important to pay heed, obviously, to basic safety, et cetera. I mean, I think that, I agree with Eva, don't be afraid, because we shouldn't be afraid, but don't be foolhardy either, obviously, because there are very real dangers. I don't disregard that at all, and we all have to be aware of that, and I definitely recognize that, and particularly for a lot of people who don't have some of the privileges that some of us have. That's a very real thing and very problematic. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Returning to the question or to the discussion of traffic control while the mural is being worked on, I'd offer the observation that private citizens such as us controlling traffic actually have no authority whatsoever to do so, which the sheriff's deputies do, but there is an alternative, and they are licensed and certified, and they might cost less, which is professional traffic control. You've seen them working around here, such as on the bridge project. Green Mountain Traffic Control up in Bellows Falls is one such firm, but I suppose there are others. I just happen to be aware of that one.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's a good point. I think that we probably can, since it's a town road, not a state road, we probably can do our own traffic control based on some, but that's a good question. I'm not sure about that. That would be worth exploring. Yeah, the other thing is part of the reason that the contract with the Windham County Sheriff's cost what it is because it was on the weekend. And, normally we would have time with Windham County Sheriffs that would not necessarily have to be a separate contract. But Karen, I know you've been trying to jump into.
Yeah, I'm going to have to just shut you down, Josh.
Okay, move on.
So Jamie, thank you for sharing those words. And I wanted to ask too, do you know where the committee is at with the social agency appropriations and or the policing?
Mm-hmm.
And I know the personnel policy, I had seen a one-page revision and I don't have it. And I'd like
I know I have it, Karen, and I'm going to go look for it and put it in your email. I'll just look for that previous email because I did have that one pager. On policing, I think one of the challenges is the summer hit and then the graffiti, and then I think we got derailed on a couple things. What's the timeline that we need to address? What's the timeline we need to address the social giving?
The social agency appropriation should be done soon because we're going to start getting into the budget talks. And it's important if we're going to be fair about how we address those appropriations.
Can you wait till the November meeting, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah, I can wait up until like maybe the 1st of January.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
But that having been said, we need to review that information, et cetera. Right. So if we have to essentially be ready to make our decisions before Christmas kind of thing, so that Karen can be ready by the 1st of January. So I'm not disagreeing with Karen, but that's really more our time schedule rather than the time schedule we need in order to be well enough in advance.
Right. I think, November 5th, I could imagine this. We've already reviewed it. We were looking at it in the spring when COVID hit. It was just, I feel like we've been all just playing some kind of crazy game these days with getting efficiently through things. So yeah, so I'll make sure that that's done on November 5th. And then as far as the one pager, you should have it in your email by the end of the meeting. And then on the police piece, I'm going to have to confer with my colleagues on that. We had a couple of agenda items, and I think our goal had been to meet with Sheriff Anderson. And I don't recall why that hasn't happened yet.
He was in active duty for about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Just got back, so.
Yeah. So I'll put that on the agenda too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do have, Jamie had emailed us that it was agreed that the Equity, and Inclusion Committee would like to have Swift Everty appointed to the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And sorry, because my printout is cut off halfway, you had said, Swift, what your actual, your legal name was. So if you could repeat that, that would be great.
Yep, and I'll put it in the chat. It's Corin Kennedy-Spielman. Corin Kennedy-Spielman. And I'll put it in.
David, would you like to make a motion to approve the appointment of Corin Kennedy-Spielman for appointment to the Equity and Inclusion Committee?
So moved.
And I'll second that. And unless there's any discussion, then all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And thank you, Swift, for your willingness, and thank you, Jamie, for your report and for the recommendation to appoint Swift to the committee. So thank you. All right.
Thank you, ladies.
Good. Thanks. And I get the sense that Karen is urging me to move through our items a little quicker. So I think unless you have anything else, Jamie, let's move on to the fire truck bond bank financing determination. And I believe Mr. Fairman might be commenting on that. Is that correct, Karen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fairman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a moment, I'm going to ask you and your colleague a question, but I'm going to preface it by saying the reason I'm asking the question is I will research the answer, the answers to your questions for your next meeting. My question to both of you is, what information do you need to decide whether or not to buy the new fire engine?
Crystal ball.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think what we need, which is unattainable, or what would comfort me certainly would be a strong sense that the economy is going to be strong enough to sustain people through the challenging times that are going to be ahead in order to pay their taxes and for the town to have its regular cash flow that we usually take for granted. And I'm not all that confident that that's the case. I think that this is, you I think reasonably or accurately assessed or felt that this was a relatively small number in the big picture of our budget, but it still is a significant number. And if our ability to collect taxes shifts, then that's of concern to me.
Are you done, Josh?
Yeah.
I also feel like it's just a matter of timing. Right from the beginning, one of my first questions to Chief Goddard was, is this a need or a want right now? And right now it's a want, not a need. He's ahead of schedule by many years, and the truck we have is fine. And if it needs repairs, even if it needs $10,000 or $20,000 repairs, that's a drop in the bucket compared to spending $750,000. And this certainly is not the responsible time to be spending $750,000. And any information that we could get, I think, could only be, speculation at best right now. I don't think there's a public safety issue at the moment. And I think that if there were a public safety issue, I would be thinking about it differently. So call me a cheap Yankee, but now is the time to, I think, sit on our heels and see how things fall out before we decide how to, if we would spend that kind of money, even if it costs us more in the future. We're not sure that it will cost us more in the future. We don't know how the political climate will affect things economically. And so to answer your question, what would I need to know? I'd need to know what it's going to look like in a year from now or 2 years from now, and you can't give me that. I don't think anybody can.
Mr. Chairman?
Karen had a comment, and then you can go ahead, Mr. Fairman. Karen, do you want to?
I do want to make a comment. We need to pay attention to the school district budget as well, because that also increases taxpayers' budgets. And we're just starting the FY22 budget, and I've been reviewing it and looking back on 2020, where we didn't bring in enough revenue. I'm having already to decrease revenue for FY22, and I'm a little concerned for FY21 because I had brought those numbers up to be more in line with 19. So I'm a little nervous. I don't know what's going to happen. And there was, I did see some article or something regarding the school district, something about climate change and how it was going to drive the budget up, which will drive, the taxes up. So there's more than one component here. And I think we really need to be conscientious in the next year or two. And I can tell you right now, the sheriff's, the local ordinances, that is way, way down. It is going to be substantially down for this year because of COVID. I'm a little nervous, but I can't predict it.
I do want to say thank you, Karen. I do want to say, just for clarity, David, and not to disagree with you, but it's not $750,000. It's significantly less than that. But your point is appreciated nonetheless.
But it is $750,000 if you consider the trade-in, because we're giving the value of the truck that we're trading in away to bring it down to $500,000. So in a way, we're losing the value of the equity of that truck. So in that way, it is.
Yes, you could interpret. Yeah, I guess one could interpret it that way. I still don't think it comes quite to $750,000, but it's not. But it's certainly a substantial chunk of money. So, right. Yeah, and I wasn't wanting to disagree with you philosophically. I just want to make sure that people are clear that we aren't in fact talking about $750,000, and we have the numbers. I'm sure Chief Goddard could easily refresh us on exactly what the numbers are, but we've been through them. So, Mr. Fairman?
Yes, by the way, the number for purchase before the end of the year is $508,000. I have taken notes on what you all have said, which I will pull together and offer a reaction at your next meeting. So that we continue to have a good discussion on this. I will, however, observe that none of us ever can know what the future will be. We think we can, but that is because we are assuming that the future will be like the present, and there's no justification for that.
Yeah, no, and that's a very valid point. I mean, we could have committed to this truck a year ago with no idea that the pandemic was coming, and then we'd be in a situation we couldn't have anticipated, and things could turn very differently for all sorts of other reasons. So no, that's a very accurate statement. And I think that David and I both very much appreciate the reality of the economy of purchasing, or the economic value of purchasing this truck in this moment in time. I think it's just questions about feeling confident that this moment in time is, it's sort of as unstable as we've seen, and certainly as I've seen in any long period of time. And so hard to predict, but you're right. None of us can predict it. So,
in that regard, Mr. Chairman, I will add that we are talking revenue limitations here and therefore budgetary restrictions. I, through this discussion, shall insist that budgetary restrictions be applied across the board and not be focused on particular departments to the benefit of other departments.
Yeah, no, we have certainly had that conversation, and are going to be looking hard at that during this budget session review. And certainly would welcome your input on that. I think that's very true. We have talked sort of gently about various other areas, but I think it's a reality. I know that's certainly a clear interest of David's, and has been since his time of coming on the board, is that we really need to have a bigger picture look at this. And actually, if you're going to be thorough, as I know you are, Mr. Fairman, our position as a municipality and the amount of debt we have and our responsibility, I know that's a point of interest for David, is sort of where we stand, partly relative to others, but partly relative to just being in good standing as far as being financially responsible. Does a town of our size, does it make sense for us to have the debt load that we have, given the assets that we have and the value of those assets to our future? And you might be better at analyzing. I'm sure you would be better at analyzing that than I would. But some opinion on that, I would imagine, would be appreciated.
I shall do.
Go ahead, Howard.
I just said shall do.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah, this is important to me for sure, and I think that I'd love to have you weigh in on this. That would be great. So.
All right. So I think that now, Mr. Fairman, your next topic for tonight, appointment of a replacement select board member. And I know you were going to have more discussion about that. I will say I have had conversations with a couple people just today, one with somebody who has expressed interest. I had emailed another person who is interested and have not yet been in touch with her, but I am trying to, I know I had sort of been sitting on this for a little while, and I apologize, but I am trying to sort of put pieces in place so that we can start to figure out the path forward. But Mr. Fairman, if you wanted to comment on information you found about the timeliness of an appointment, I'd be interested.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I acknowledge what you have just said in the context of what I am about to say. Since September 3rd, 2020, there has been a vacancy on our Town of Putney Select Board. When a vacancy occurs in any town office, the Select Board forthwith, by appointment in writing, shall fill such vacancy until an election is had, 24 VSA Section 963A. 7 weeks later, October 21st, 2020, this vacancy has not been filled. I have confirmed with the Office of the Vermont Secretary of State that, although forthwith is not defined by the statute, courts instead refer to commonly understood meanings of words. Forthwith, without delay, immediately, Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. Members of our Town of Putney Select Board, this statute is not your legal option. It is your legal obligation to fellow citizens of Putney. It is now too late for you to act without delay or immediately, so I, on behalf of all citizens of Putney, am acting toward filling the vacancy on our Select Board. Town of Putney registered voters are invited to submit on or before November 4th, 2020, your letters of interest to be appointed to a vacancy on our Town of Putney Select Board until 2021 Putney Town Meeting, when you can run for election to a 3-year term. Candidates are invited to attend the November 4th, 2020 regular meeting of our Town of Putney Select Board to publicly present your candidacies and answer questions, after which current members of our Town of Putney Select Board will belatedly fulfill their legal obligation to publicly appoint and empower our new select person.
Sounds fair. I had actually spoken to a couple of these folks about doing things maybe even a little sooner than that. You probably are aware that we did in fact post this vacancy, and in that posting invited people. I can't remember exactly what the wording, Karen, but it did state that there was an opening and that it would be filled, and I can't remember whether it said to submit in writing or not, but
It did.
it did. So
Yeah.
that posting has been made, and we have had a couple people, I don't think necessarily as a result of that posting, but we have had people express an interest. One thing that has been asked of me, and I don't know, and I would, how we asked this of legal counsel as well, and I didn't get a very clear answer. If we end up with, for example, 3 people who are potentially interested in this position, based on what criteria would we appoint one over another? And I think that's as you have just invited people to make a statement, it would be based, I guess, largely on people's statement. But it's a hard thing this is not something I've had to do before in my role as select person. And, for all practical purposes, well, of course we appoint people all the time for various different reasons, but this is a different situation. But the criteria on which we would choose one person over another is a little vague to me. So,
well, in that regard, Mr. Chairman, you and your colleague are free to choose however you please. It is really not that different than interviewing someone for any job.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So it would be based on experience and value, presumably what somebody could offer of value to the board, obviously not financial value, but wisdom or experience. So, good. Well, thank you for clarifying that for us, and we will be working towards that goal. And people, I've said it before, but anybody who's interested, please reach out. And I have had people reach out. So I think we're in a good position to appoint somebody, just haven't done it yet. So we will belatedly try and take care of that. Or in fact, we will belatedly take care of it, not just try. All right, so next is Sandglass Notice of Intent for Grant Application. And this is a repeat of an application that had potentially was going to be filed previously and then wasn't, and I can't remember exactly the circumstances. I think it was having trouble meeting a deadline, but we've had this discussion. I believe this is related to purchase of computer equipment. Is that correct, Karen?
That is correct, Josh. We tried to submit it in April, but the timing was, I didn't have enough time to pull it all together for Sandglass Theater. And so we are going to be the applicant. So we are going to submit this grant on behalf of Sandglass Theater. And it is for computer equipment. And the amount is $15,000.
And was that the same circumstance as before, that we would have been the applicant previously or not?
No, they had their name on there as the applicant, but it has to come through the town. So we're going to be the applicant. They're going to manage and administer, but I'm sure I will have to track all the expenses and then submit the grant. but I'm working with Sandglass, and they've been very accommodating and helpful on this grant. Now, in the past, has the town submitted for other organizations, like nonprofits? I think we did for Next Stage, right? Did we not?
More typically, we write either a letter of endorsement or recommendation. I can't answer that accurately for you. There are circumstances in which we have, but more typically we're a pass-through. So it's in the name of the applicant, but it comes to the town, but goes through to the applicant. You know, the only thing I would say is that in a circumstance like this, and I can't remember what this, we have had a circumstance like this in the past, and there are, I don't, you know, this may be simple enough so it's a non-issue, but typically there is some money included in a grant application for administering of the grant if the town is having to do that. So I don't know whether that is either necessary or the case in this grant, but your time should be
tracked.
If yeah, I mean, if it's going to be, you know, a significant number of hours on your part, we should be reimbursed for that by the grant, because that is an expense to taxpayers that is specific to a singular business, and we should not be incurring those expenses. So if you feel that's necessary, then I would say that would be my only question about that.
Okay. No, I agree with you. Sometimes when you think it's going to be easy, just like Putney Landing, that was a pass-through grant.
Right.
But I had a lot, I was involved with that on different levels.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I mean, in a situation like that, there's a whole lot more work involved, so administrative fees are more significant. But any grant, as you well know, is time consuming. So, you know, I would just have that conversation with either the possible grantor or with Sandglass as to what the implications of that are for the town, because so what do you need from us, Karen? Do you need it, or are you just essentially notifying us at this point that this is happening?
Well, I need your approval to send in the letter of intent. Right now, the USDA is backed up from the spring awards. They haven't even been able to get through that. So there is no submission date yet for the winter. And Sandglass will let me know when that's going to happen. But I'm pretty much already complete with what I needed to do. So now I need to just sign the grant application and date it. But I'm not going to do that until we have a date for submittal.
So, and do you need to submit a letter of intent previous to that, previous to submitting the actual application?
We do, and it will go with the application as well.
Okay, so so do you want approval for the application for the grant as well, or just for the submittal of a letter of intent at this point?
I would like the letter of intent.
Okay.
So you want a motion to submit a letter of intent for the grant for Sandglass Theater from the USDA?
Yes.
Does it need to have a date attached to it?
No, not at this point, because well, it'll be as of today, David, for the letter of intent.
So I make that motion.
Okay. So it's been moved to approve the town manager submitting a letter of intent to the USDA for the intent to apply for a grant from the USDA. I will second that motion. And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Halloween announcement from the select board. I don't know whether you have something prepared for this, Karen. I remember.
So
in
I
our-
went ahead
in our
and
packet.
yeah, I emailed you
Yeah.
various notices for Halloween. And I first want to thank Ruby McAdoo and Amy Nelson and anyone else who has coordinated this event for the children in Putney. So they've decided on a drive-through trick-or-treating at Putney Central School, which will happen on October 31st from 3 to 5 p.m. And according to the CDC guidelines, this is one of the better ideas, and it's safer for the kids. So it's basically a drive-through. Candy will be handed out to them, and yeah, it's going to be during the day, which is even better. This group is also doing a Halloween candy drive. So they're looking for donations for bags of candy that are already individually wrapped. Unopened bags of candy would be good. And other items, maybe stickers and, small giveaway, like stickers and, whatever else little Halloween kids usually get. They are also looking for volunteers. So anyone who is interested, these flyers are up on our website. So you can go there and get the details. But it is important, Josh, that door-to-door trick-or-treating is not recommended.
Yes.
And there's certain guidelines to that. If people are going to put out candy, you put it out on a platter. So you're not grabbing into a bowl and you're not handing out candy to people.
But that is the recommendation of the Vermont Department of Health, is that door-to-door trick-or-treating is not recommended. So we, the select board, are discouraging people from engaging in door-to-door trick-or-treating with anywhere within the town of Putney. We're sorry to have to say that, and we hope that everybody, and particularly the kids, can enjoy a safe and lucrative candy experience this Halloween. But it's just going to be an oddball of a year, and hopefully families can do something special at home in order to make that possible, and can do the drive-through at Putney Central School, which I'm sure, given who's organizing it and the effort that's gone in, I'm sure it's going to be great. So,
whoops.
Go ahead.
I request that something go up on iPutney that says just that, and for us to remember that every time this road has been closed in the past, it's not just local people. It's Brattleboro, Dummerston, and some Bellas Falls. And so the thing is, and I think they responded for the road being closed back in the day over the time because it was written up in the Reformer. There would be something in the Reformer saying that it was happening. And so that brought in more people. And I think something needs to go in the newspaper, both papers, and on iPutney saying, door to door is discouraged. There will be no close down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
The CDC also recommends, like, you could do a neighborhood like party. Families can do something at home, but they just want to keep everyone safe at this point. But
and it has to be.
I agree. I think something should be written, Josh, and posted.
I think that's fine. We might. I think that would be great. it might be worth, Karen, if it's not too much effort, touching base with some of the other local towns, because there might want to be a joint effort on that to say, you know, none of us are planning to do this, but that might be above and beyond. So, but yes, I'm certainly comfortable that we would send it in.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a different year, unfortunately, and hopefully maybe next year, you know, we can be, you know, back to the new norm, whatever that may look like. But I did want to recognize Ruby and Amy and everyone else who's coordinated this. There's some comments, Josh. I don't know if you can see those.
Yeah, Corin, this is from Jamie you're talking about?
Yes.
I think, Jamie, that I will, it's too specific a question for during the meeting, I think, so I think I will address that. It's a question about information that a group is sending out and whether the town of Putney Emergency Management wants to be included on that postcard. So I will follow up on that, Jamie, and make sure somebody gets in touch with you tomorrow to let you know what we think about that. All right. Okay, so next, review and approve grants and aid application. So this is specific to, I believe, the basically watershed runoff grant money.
Yep, stormwater runoff, yep, on the road, best management practices implementation. And currently, Brian's working on Holland Hill from the bottom to the top. I was up there today. I took a lot of pictures. There's a lot of ditching going on, and this is what this grant is all about. I want to just inform the board and the public. So Putney right now has 458 segments that need to come into compliance. And of that 458, there are 65 high priority segments that need to be completed within 3 years. Okay, so when I do the math, that's like 22 segments per year. So this grant right here, this is the money that's used to do the ditching. And sometimes we have ditches on 2 sides. Sometimes we only have a ditch on 1. And depending on the grade of the road, dictates if you have a vegetative ditch or if you have to put stone in there. So I was impressed with Holland Hill and what he did. And the other thing we have to consider too is that when you have different segments, especially if they're high priority, they might not all be on that one road. And they might be like you have some down at the bottom and you have some up the top. So Brian took Holland Hill and he did the entire road. That road is done. So he doesn't have to go back to it. And he'll be looking at other roads like that. And together, he and I will look at the maps that Wyndham Regional created to show us where those segments are. And then he'll be choosing the priority roads and trying to get those done in, you know, the 3 years that we have. The other thing too, Wyndham Regional Commission just wrote a letter to the state of Vermont. The way, because there's so many high priority roads down in Wyndham County, being able to get the funding to complete the work, they're asking that the state prioritize the funding as well. Because you have some towns like Grafton, they're all set, they're 100% like in compliance. And then you have other towns like Halifax and Wardsboro where, you know, the numbers are staggering, you know. Westminster is another one. They have 567 segments with 71 high priority. So there's not enough money to get the job done as soon as the state wants it to get completed. So this is going to be a challenge to meet these schedules for municipalities. And some may be able to do it and others probably not. But this grant money right here is important, and every year we're going to have to apply for this. So my recommendation is that you reviewed and you will approve this. So the total amount for this grant for Putney will be $23,625. Of that, V-Trans will award us $18,900, and then there's a 20% local match or in kind for $4,725.
And we historically have done that in kind. There are a couple things I want to. This is largely, at least in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but this is largely for purchase of material for those roads. It's really buying riprap or large crushed stone to roads, and we've done it in a number of locations. For me, since I live on Tavern Hill, one of the most noticeable is Tavern Hill. It makes a pretty remarkable difference. I mean, the maintainability of a road once this is done is much higher. It's noticeably different. But the other thing I want to point out about that, one might say, well, why are we going out and buying crushed stone or riprap when we own a gravel pit? And the reason why is because we cannot purchase that from ourselves. So in order to spend this grant money, we actually have to purchase that elsewhere. So, and I may be misspeaking, Karen, but I believe that most of this material will be coming from Cold River. Is that correct? Do you know?
Yeah. I don't know that for sure, but that's usually where Brian purchases this type of, it's not even gravel, they're big stones.
Chunks of stone, yeah.
If we don't have that down at the pit, we would have to blast and then have it crushed to a certain size. So he buys it.
But we'd have to blast and have it crushed to a certain size, but then we wouldn't be able to pay for it. So this way we're able to use grant money to purchase the material that we wouldn't be able to if we were taking it out of our own pit. And that seems a little counterintuitive, but it's just a reality of dealing with a state grant and ownership of gravel pit. So, the flip side of that is that we then don't deplete our supply of crushed rock at the pit, because Dummerston's doing the same thing we are, and they have to do the same.
That is correct.
So,
Karen, I'm sorry, Josh, you done?
Go ahead.
22 sections a year for 3 years, was that the number I heard? If we're going to meet the deadline, that seems not realistic to me. How does Brian feel about that?
Brian just, Brian picks a road and he just goes with it, and he knows the roads. He knows the ones that wash out, he knows the ones with the berms that need to, all the berms need to go away. So the way the road is crowned, if it can't sheet off, in a way that it doesn't erode the road, Brian's going to hit those roads first. I mean, it makes sense. The other thing too, David, later down the road, if we're shy and we're not going to meet that goal in 3 years, we could ultimately subcontract and have somebody come in, and I don't believe Brian would do that because he takes a lot of pride in his roads and his work. Again, I drove Holland Hill today and they were up there. There were 3 dump trucks up there. The excavator was up there. Brian was in the excavator. All 3 trucks were running, And, you know, I think it's been maybe, I want to say 2 weeks on Holland Hill. But it's a pretty long road, you know?
I'm guessing, Karen, that when you say sections, and I haven't looked at this recently to remind myself, but Holland Hill, for example, David, I would imagine is a number of sections.
I was wondering about that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what Brian tries to do is to pick scenarios that address a number of different things, you know, basically killing more than one bird with one stone kind of thing.
That's what he's doing, yeah.
You know, Holland Hill, I don't know how many sections that would represent, but I'm guessing it would be a number. And so by doing the whole thing, he will have checked off X number of sections.
One more question. Are we negatively impacted if we don't get all these sections done in the next 3 years? So the funding that we would get would have to be repaid or to some degree? How does that work?
No, I don't think so, but
how are we negatively impacted?
I don't know if they figured that out yet. And I think as like regional planning commissions, you know, write letters to the state. And we also requested Jim Ryan to come down because Putney Mountain, you get the brook on one side and you know how narrow that road is. And you have trees, you have rocks. So how do you put a ditch on a road that's already too narrow? You know, and we need the state to come down and look at that and say, you can't do it here, you know? And so they got to reevaluate. And I'm sure we're not the only town like that. You know, Sun Hill is another road. It's like you might be able to get a ditch on one side. Can you get it to sheet off on the other? Maybe. But there are roads in town that we may not even be able to, you know, connect those segments.
Got
it. And
my
about the segment.
My recollection, David, is that what the downside is future funding. That if you aren't able to keep up with it, you're less likely to get future funding. I might be wrong. That's my recollection. But I think that that's sort of the reason. Well, I mean, I think that's the reason everybody's taking it seriously is the more you can stay ahead of it now, the more it's going to benefit you in the long run. I believe is the answer to that, but I'm not 100% sure.
I want to say, I don't know if they can find a town. I don't know. It's in the back of my mind, though. I might have heard that somewhere, but I can't confirm.
Yeah, I think there are penalties of some sort, and I can't remember whether it's fines or just negative, you know, funding for the future. But Brian would know, I'm sure, or somewhere. The Wyndham Regional would definitely know. Okay, so you would like a motion to approve the grants and aid application, is that correct?
Yes.
So moved?
So moved.
Okay.
I have a question, Josh.
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, sorry.
So I will second the motion to approve the grants and aid application, and then that leaves us open for discussion. You have a question?
I do. So we talked about electronic signatures.
Oh, yeah.
Back in May.
Yeah.
How does the board feel about creating electronic signatures? Because something like this, Josh, it's due like October 30th.
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss the deadline.
I'm fine with that. I can't remember. Let me do the motion, Karen, and then we'll talk about that. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the grants and aid application. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. So yeah, I'm fine with electronic signature. There is a process for that. And I can't remember exactly what the process is, but if you want to, I mean, why don't we, David, intend to go and sign the things that we have approved and need to sign in the next couple days, so those are done. But then, Karen, if you want to explore what the process is and move forward on electronic
Yeah.
application, electronic.
So Alyssa's gone ahead and done that. So
Okay.
she's already created, one in the system for both of you and myself, actually. She did one for me.
Okay.
And, but you can also go down and actually use the mouse to sign your name. So
Right.
it actually looks like your signature. So if that's something you want to do, when you come down to sign this, we can sit with Alyssa and she can
Figure
get
that
you
out.
set up.
Okay, sounds good.
But I think it's important.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do it all the time. As long as we know you're coming down to sign things.
Yeah.
And we won't put your name on it.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, so next is, thank you for putting that grant application together, Karen, and thank you, Brian, also, because I know he's a significant part of that. Recommendation for Paul Bemis to repair the steps in front of Town Hall.
Correct. So he quoted us $5,000. I spoke to him. He's able to get the stone. They're not going to be the same stairs that are there. He's going to pull them all out and he's going to put these big stones that will not decay. They're not going to move and they'll be stable. So it's a $5,000 quote and we really need to have them repaired because right now it's a huge liability.
Will he, in that process, reapply the guardrails or the handrails?
I did not ask him that, and he did not mention it, but he would have to put the handrails back.
We should just make sure he's intending to do that. And I see Eva is raising her hand.
What about the swimming pool at the top of the steps? What about the water there?
Oh, the landing? Yeah, I can't, I had Brad King look at that like 2 years ago. There is some sort of fill that he can put on top of that. But again, he's never come back to give me a quote. I can follow up with him. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's all eroding, Eva. And in the wintertime, it's awful. It's all ice right there.
It's dangerous. Talking about danger. There's your danger.
Are you talking about the landing right outside the doors of Town Hall, or are you talking about, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
There's four in. I'll have a look at it, Eva, and see what I think, but maybe we can rope Brad in. But that's something that would have to be done before it starts to freeze hard, because that material that he's talking about doesn't take kindly to freezing. So I'll try and have a look at that.
Okay. So can we move ahead with the stairs?
So, yes. So motion to go ahead and have Paul Bemis repair the stairway, David?
I'll make a motion for that. Yeah, so moved.
And I'll second that. And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Errors and omissions certificate from the listers. So this, Karen told me that there's no numerical change in this. It's just a change in the
code.
Code that, so, well, I guess that would be a numerical change, but
well, it was miscoded.
Not a monetary change.
Right. No monetary change. It was miscoded. So they basically, it was coded as in state, not in town. So that has been corrected. There's no monetary change. So I would like review and approval on that.
State, in town, mail delivered to house. Yeah, okay. So motion to approve the errors and omissions certificate as presented.
Yes, so moved.
And I'll second that. And if there's no further discussion, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
So Josh, this will
quarterly-
require both your signatures as well.
Okay, sounds good. So, yeah, so David, we should just plan on getting down in there in the next few days. Quarterly financials. So we have those reports. I have not had time to spend a lot of time on this. So,
Nor have I. Nor have I.
So it's early. This is like the first quarter. I will allow both of you to review them, and if you have any questions, bring them to me in the next meeting. I think right now we, financially we're in good shape, but it's early in the year. There are a couple of line items that are over budget already. I've already questioned them. And they're not considerable for me to worry about it. If they keep climbing, then I'll get concerned. But right now it's in good shape.
Equipment purchase. Yeah, one that leaps out to me, Karen, is equipment purchase line item. This is on page 3 of 3.
That's the fire department, and that is all new gear.
Okay.
So just in our last warrant, we had like 2 or 3, the pants and the jackets for the fire department. They have had new people join the fire department. So this is
Good.
part of that. We can justify this, Josh.
Okay.
But we do have new.
I'm happy to spend money on gear for new firefighters. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, so David, why don't you and I just plan on spending some time on that in the next couple of weeks, and if we have, we're going to be getting more into budgets anyway. So,
Right.
But if there's anything that comes up as a question, we can ask about that next time. So,
Do you have a question?
Yes, I should have asked it way back when. Since the private schools helped pay for or paid for basically the fire station, I wonder if it's time to invite them to thoughtfully relinquish for a future purchase of a fire truck down the road.
So we're going to have to renegotiate with the private schools for that contribution. It looks like it goes in 5-year increments.
It does.
So, yes. And whatever happens with the fire truck, that would be considered too in that number.
Good.
So we look at different, not variables, but different components of that, Eva. So like the sheriff's contract, like a new fire truck, and there's different items we look at to figure out that formula and what it's going to be. And also too, like because the contributions that they make basically does go towards the fire station bond is what it covers.
But that payment for the fire station bond has been decreasing, and therefore the amount over. Essentially, we had not this conversation, but when we were renegotiating last time, Eva, the discussion is that it really, in many ways, goes into a public safety fund, and so. As the payments on the fire department decrease, the amount of money that's available for other aspects of public safety increase. So, I think your point is well taken that if we were to look at purchasing a fire truck, we could certainly look at how, at the value to those institutions of having that piece of apparatus and play that into the negotiation. But as it is, that's where that money goes already, is basically towards public safety.
That's okay.
No,
That's
it's a good
okay.
idea.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that we also need to be cognizant of the fact, and full disclosure, I'm on the board at Putney School as well. Things are going well for both of our, or for all of our local private educational institutions at the moment, but COVID definitely presents a threat to them. So that is a real factor for all of those institutions in this moment, and looking for them and looking at their budgets, because as we were talking about before, the lack of clarity on what's going to happen over the next year or two is not insignificant for any of them either. So.
And I know, and you all know the same, that when it comes up at town meeting, issues about tax on those lands, this is the best homeopathic remedy is we pay for this and that, and we're going to help with the fire truck at the point down the road when you decide to get it, or something like that.
Yeah, no, and I think, again, that I think it's a good point, Eva, and in fact, from a negotiation standpoint, I think that could be quite valid to say, you have done this in the past, but we are looking at a new fire truck. Would you be willing to do a portion towards that, or something along those lines? So something to take into consideration. All right, Karen, I think that puts it on you for town manager's report.
Okay, let me quickly move through this. So I wanted to let the board and the public know that we did get our financial notes for the fire department exhaust system and for the new highway dump truck. So both those notes have been secured. The money has been wired into our account. Brian's new truck is getting outfitted with the body.
The highway department's new truck.
Yeah.
Not Brian.
Well, yeah, the highway, the Putney Highway
Be
Department.
careful there. Be careful.
The road foreman's new truck is being outfitted with the body.
You'll hear about that, Karen.
I know. So we will. We should be seeing that probably. What are we? Probably by November, sometime in November, hopefully. And the fire exhaust system is scheduled to be put in November. And Tom is working with the state of Vermont with the hazmat truck. They have a new person in that office, so that looks promising.
Good.
So that's good news. We already talked about, we're going to be starting the fiscal year 22 budget talks. So probably in our next meeting, you're gonna be, well, maybe not. That might be too early. Maybe towards the end of November. We secured 2 other grants. We've secured a $5,000 grant from a nonprofit for the town clerk's office for elections. We can pretty much use that money for, seize guards, the secure drop-off box that's out front, cleaning of the fire station after voting takes place, extra staff for John, any personal protection equipment that he needs. So this $5,000 can be used for that, which is great. I also put in for an Algier grant, which the total amount we submitted was $7,500. And I have to look at those expenses, because if any of that can be paid through the public safety federal grant, then we are to do that. And that was the grant that we had to have a minimum threshold of $3,300. But now I will pick through those expenses and see if we meet that threshold. I don't believe we're going to, but this grant most likely will cover those expenses. So that was $7,500. And I want to thank Alyssa Harlow too, because she put a lot of stuff together for me to be able to see and get the grants prepared and get them sent off. So I think it's great that we've secured 2 more grants.
Yes.
As far as the land records they went live as of today on the new COT system, which we ended up with that grant as well. Right now we have land records up to 1980. Not all of them are online, but every day more gets put online. So John has emailed all his attorneys and his title researchers and said, please go to the new system. If you can get what you need there, and it gets paid for right online, and then we end up with the funds. So, I mean, Alyssa doesn't even have to track any of this. It just comes to us directly from the company. And John will still make appointments if title researchers and attorneys cannot get everything they need online. But the town of Putney is online for digital land records.
And is that open to the general public
Yes.
and accessed through the Town of Putney website?
Not through the, I don't believe it's not through the website, but I think we're going to be able to put a link that will take, the people there. John has a specific link, but we definitely will put it online as well. Because I know Brattleboro does that, Josh.
Okay.
Let's see, what else do I have? I am going to make another public plea that we need 4 members for the Planning Commission. Anyone out there that wants to learn about town government, town planning, please step up. This group has a lot of work to do and they are short-staffed, and we need members. So now it's the time to step up. One other item I had is we have an opening on the highway department. So I did advertise it 2 weeks in a row in the Commons. We did not receive any applications. So we're down a man right now.
A person?
A person, sorry. We're actually down 2 people, if you want to think about it, because 3 years ago, we never filled that position. So right now, there is at least 1 position open. And I did ask Brian, I said, how do you want to handle this? And he's not concerned right now. I said, well, we need to, fill this position. I says, because if somebody gets hurt or somebody gets sick, we need to have that extra person. So.
And how did that vacancy occur?
Tyler Westney ended up taking another job.
Oh, he did? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I am too. I spoke to him, but he went to a different, something totally different, something that he's been wanting to do. And I just kind of told him, I said, well, if it doesn't work out, you can come back here. But hopefully hopefully he'll be okay. And
yeah, well, and I know he's been a
huge
good addition to the highway department, and thank him.
Yep.
We thank him for his time that he put in for the town of Putney.
Yeah. So it's about 3 years, 3, maybe 4. I think it was 4. Yeah. So that's all I have on that note.
All right. You want to comment on FY22 budget process or not right now?
No, I'm just looking into it now. I just started it myself. So
Okay.
Brian will get his department. The library's working on theirs. Tom's working on his. So I'll give them some deadlines, but probably by December, Josh, we'll start getting into the numbers. But I'll pull as much together as I can, and I'll start giving you and David information so you can start looking at it.
Eva was just holding up her flowers to bring a little cheer into our lives. Thank you, Eva. Eva, I know you're well connected with young people out there looking for jobs, so we have an opening on the highway department. Find us.
I'm on it. I'm on it. But you know, it's tricky times. What we need, well, I won't say anything. Hey, I so appreciate the three of you I'm seeing on the screen right now. Thank you.
Thank
Karen,
you.
Thank you.
David, and Josh, you're the best.
Thank you.
Where are your flowers? Oh, she didn't hear me.
All right, so do we have any other business?
So in your packets, you have 2 letters. Sorry, I'm going to go through these quickly too.
Yeah, sounds good.
Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and Sevids. They're having their annual meeting on Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. So we are invited if you want to partake in that. The second letter is from the town of Newfane. So they lost their animal control officer and they were wondering if we would share ours. So I called Juanetta Powling and I explained to her that we also didn't have an animal control, but Chief Anderson with the Windham County Sheriff's Department is recirculating back to Westminster and Putney because we had a conversation about a regional shared animal control officer. And Chief Anderson informed me that Dummerston is going to sit in on this meeting as well. And I let Juanetta Powling know that she should contact the Windham County Sheriff's Department and get in on this conversation as well. So there's a potential for 4 towns now to share an animal control officer. And if Windham County Sheriff's Department can pull it together and have a trained person, then all of these rural towns can be covered.
That would be awesome.
I know, right? So I will keep you updated on that.
Great. Good. All right. Any other business?
None.
I don't see anybody in the chat perking up. So my printout cut me off there. Let's see. Do we need our next meeting date will be 2 weeks from today, correct?
Yes. So November 7th. No, November 4th. Sorry.
4th.
November 4th.
Okay. Oh boy, November 4th. That'll be an interesting day. Yeah. Okay, good. Next meeting, November 4th, 5:30. Do we need an executive session, Karen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so let's see. Anything else do we need to do before we go? Will there be any decision as a result of executive session?
I hope so.
Okay, good. David, you want to make that motion?
Motion to enter executive session. Are we going to invite Karen?
Yes. Let's invite Karen, and this is under Karen VA.
It's under Title I BSA 3133.
Okay.
Appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public official or an employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during the open meeting.
Good. I'll second the motion to go into executive session, and if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. So we have exited executive session and had a discussion, and as a result, David is going to make a motion.
And I'd like to make the motion to appoint Julian Lavoy as treasurer until town meeting next March.
All right, and I will second that motion. And as long as there is no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then unless you have anything else, Karen, a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, and I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. No further discussion. All in favor? Adjourned at 8:40. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right.
Good night.
Yeah,
You got it.
Good night.